You weak woman! General Douglas Hartwell's spit landed on Private Jessica Torres's face. His steel-toed boot drew back, aimed at her ribs. 200 soldiers watched. No one moved. Then a 52-year-old woman in a wrinkled logistics uniform crossed 30 feet in 3 seconds flat. The crack of Hartwell's arm, hyperextending, echoed across the arena like a gunshot. 230 pounds of decorated general hit the Arizona dust, screaming like a wounded animal. The woman standing over him looked like someone's grandmother. Gray-streaked hair, thick glasses, invisible for 3 weeks. Her name was Commander Maya Chen, callsign Spectre, retired Navy SEAL, 67 confirmed kills, and she had just ended a monster's 35-year reign in the time it takes to draw a single breath. If you want to know how an invisible middle-aged woman brought down one of the most powerful generals in the United States military, subscribe now and stay until the very end. Comment your city below. I want to see how far this story travels. The scream that echoed across Fort Ironwood's combat training arena wasn't from the young private everyone expected to break. It came from General Douglas Hartwell, 58 years old, commander of the most prestigious training installation in Arizona, a man whose chest carried enough medals to stop a bullet, whose voice had made colonels tremble and senators apologize. That scream, high-pitched, desperate, the sound of a predator suddenly discovering he was prey, would haunt everyone who heard it for the rest of their lives. "My arm!" Hartwell gasped, his face pressed into the Arizona dust. "You're breaking my arm." "I know." The woman's voice was calm, almost gentle. The voice of a kindergarten teacher explaining why we don't hit our friends. "If you move, I'll complete the break. If you stay still, you might keep partial function. Your choice, General." 200 soldiers stood frozen around the arena. Lieutenant Colonel Frank Morrison, Hartwell's enforcer, had his hand on his sidearm, but couldn't seem to make his fingers work. Captain Derek Stone, the base's psychological warfare specialist, looked like he'd forgotten how to breathe. Private Jessica Torres, 23 years old, blood running from her split lips, stared at the scene before her with an expression that would take her years to fully understand. The woman who'd saved her, the invisible logistics officer she'd barely noticed for 3 weeks, had just done something impossible. "Who the hell are you?" Hartwell managed through gritted teeth. The woman smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "My name is Commander Maya Chen, United States Navy retired. Call sign Spectre." She increased the pressure slightly, and Hartwell screamed again. "And you, General, are under arrest." "Badik." 72 hours earlier, the woman who would destroy General Hartwell's life was sitting in an underground bunker that didn't exist, reading files about people who wished they didn't exist anymore. The facility was 40 feet beneath the Pentagon's east parking structure. No sign marked its entrance. No budget line item funded its operations. The men and women who worked there had names on paper that connected to nothing, real addresses that led to empty lots, families who'd been told they worked overseas in positions too boring to ask about. Colonel Robert Patterson sat across the steel table from Maya Chen, watching her read. At 71, Patterson had spent 50 years doing work that would never appear in history books. His hair had gone silver in his 40s, his back had started hurting in his 50s, and his doctors had been telling him to retire since his 60s. He'd ignored all of them. The mission didn't retire. "Fort Ironwood," Patterson said, sliding another photograph across the table. "General Douglas Hartwell, you know the type." Maya studied the image. Strong jaw, steel gray hair, the kind of bearing that filled doorways and silenced rooms. Chest heavy with decorations from Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan. The face of a man who'd learned command when women weren't allowed in combat roles and had never updated his worldview. "I was trained by men like him," Maya said quietly. "In the 80s, before the rules changed. That's why you're perfect for this." "Is that supposed to be a compliment?" Patterson's weathered face cracked into something that might have been a smile. "It's supposed to be the truth. You survived them, Maya. You know how they think, how they operate, how they hide. And more importantly, you know how to stop them." Maya set down the photograph. At 52, she'd spent more of her life hunting predators than she'd spent doing anything else. 28 years in the shadows, 67 confirmed kills across 5 continents. The only woman in Navy history to complete BUDS training twice, once at 24 because she had something to prove, and once at 41 because she'd gotten tired of men telling her age meant weakness. "What's his body count?" she asked. Patterson slid a folder across the table. It was thick, too thick. 127 documented incidents in 18 months, 23 medical discharges, 4 attempted suicides. He paused. 1 successful. Maya opened the folder. Young faces stared up at her, men and women in uniform. Some showed obvious injuries, black eyes, split lips, arms in slings. Others showed something worse. The 1,000-yard stare of soldiers whose spirits had been systematically crushed. How is he still in command? Political connections. His brother-in-law is on the Armed Services Committee. His former XO is now a 2-star at the Pentagon. His network protects him, and he protects them. Patterson's voice hardened. It's a machine, Maya. A systematic process for identifying and destroying anyone who shows excellence, independence, or moral courage, especially women in combat roles. Maya turned to the next page. A young woman's face stared back at her. Blonde hair, sharp features, eyes that held both intelligence and determination. The kind of face that belonged on recruiting posters. Who's she? Private Jessica Torres, 23 years old. First-generation military. Her parents immigrated from Mexico in 1995. Top of her class in every metric: physical fitness, marksmanship, tactical reasoning, leadership assessments. The kind of soldier the Army desperately needs. And exactly the kind Hartwell targets. She's been at Fort Ironwood for 6 weeks. The targeting started in week 2. Patterson pulled out another photograph, older, faded. A female soldier in desert camouflage, dust-covered, cradling an M4 rifle. The resemblance to Jessica was unmistakable. That's her mother, Sergeant Maria Torres, Fallujah, 2004. Something shifted in Patterson's expression, a tightness around the eyes that Maya had learned to read over 20 years of working together. You knew her. She saved my life. Patterson's voice dropped. Convoy ambush. My vehicle took an RPG, flipped. Fuel leak, fire spreading. Maria pulled 3 of us out through the flames. His jaw worked. Took shrapnel in her back doing it. 18 pieces. Medical retirement 6 months later. Maya understood. Debts like that didn't expire. They just waited for a chance to be repaid. What's the timeline? 2 weeks, maybe less. Hartwell's accelerating. He's scheduled Jessica for an advanced combat evaluation in 14 days. We've intercepted communications. The evaluation is rigged. Equipment sabotage, hostile observers, impossible standards. She'll either be broken or forced out. And if she survives, Patterson's expression darkened. We have intelligence suggesting Hartwell's prepared for that possibility too. An accident during training, equipment failure. The kind of thing that gets investigated and finds no wrongdoing. Maya closed the folder. Mission parameters. Deep cover. Intelligence analyst in the logistics division. The kind of position a 52-year-old female officer might be shuffled into at the end of an unremarkable career. Patterson met her eyes. You'll be invisible, Maya. Beneath notice. The kind of person Hartwell and his inner circle look through without seeing. Document everything. Build the federal case. Take down the entire network. Exactly. We need evidence that will stand up in military tribunal and federal court. We need to prove not just individual incidents, but systematic conspiracy. We need to burn down the entire machine, not just the man running it. Maya nodded slowly. Nodded. It was the kind of mission she'd run 100 times. Infiltrate, observe, document, extract. Patient work, invisible work. Rules of engagement. Standard protocol. Observe and report. Maintain cover at all costs. No direct intervention unless I witness imminent threat to life, Maya finished. I know the rules, Robert. I wrote half of them. I know you did. Patterson leaned forward, and for a moment the professional mask slipped. She saw the 71-year-old man underneath, tired, aching, carrying 50 years of invisible sacrifice. But this one is personal for me, Maya. Maria Torres saved my life. I owe her a debt I can never repay. And now her daughter is in danger because a small, cruel man is threatened by her excellence. He reached across the table and gripped her hand. I need you, invisible specter. I need you, patient. I need you to build the case that puts Hartwell away forever. Can you do that for me? Maya looked at the photographs spread across the table. 127 victims, 23 careers destroyed, one soldier dead by her own hand because she couldn't take any more. I'll do better than that, she said quietly. I'll make sure he never has the chance to hurt anyone again. Captain Margaret Williams arrived at Fort Ironwood on a Tuesday morning driving a 12-year-old Honda Civic with a dented fender and a Support Our Troops bumper sticker faded almost to white. Her service record was unremarkable. 28 years in uniform, most of it in logistics and administration. Passed over for promotion twice. Currently assigned to supply chain management, the kind of position that ambitious officers avoided like a career-ending plague. Her personnel file contained the usual evaluations. Adequate performance. Meets expectations. Steady and reliable. The words of officers who couldn't remember her name without checking the nameplate on her desk. Her appearance matched the record. Gray-streaked hair pulled back in a regulation bun. Thick-framed glasses that looked like they'd been purchased from a military exchange in 1995. Rumpled uniform that had seen too many washings. The slightly defeated posture of someone counting the days until retirement. No one who saw Captain Williams that Tuesday morning would have guessed that her real name was Maya Chen. That she held the Navy Cross and 2 silver stars in a safe deposit box no one knew about. That she could kill a man 12 different ways with her bare hands and another 40 with whatever happened to be lying around. That was the point. The first face she memorized belonged to Lieutenant Colonel Frank Morrison, 47 Hartwell's chief of staff and primary enforcer. Morrison was the kind of officer who'd found his natural level as someone else's attack dog. He'd never had an original idea in his career, but he executed orders with brutal efficiency. Captain Williams. Morrison's voice dripped with the particular contempt that certain men reserved for older female officers. Logistics, right? Yes, sir. Supply chain management. Try not to get in anyone's way. Maya kept her expression neutral, deferential. Slightly nervous the way a career officer in a dead-end position might react to casual hostility from a superior. Of course, sir. I'm just here to process requisitions. Morrison had already lost interest. His eyes slid past her towards something more important, and Maya watched him go with the patience of a hunter who knew that rushing the shot meant missing the target. Over the next 72 hours, she mapped the entire network. Captain Derek Stone, 34, psychological warfare specialist. His official job was training effectiveness assessment. His real job was breaking recruits through isolation gaslighting and systematic humiliation. He had a gift for finding weaknesses and exploiting them for making strong people believe they were worthless. Master Sergeant William Drake, 51, equipment supervisor. Drake was responsible for the accidents that plagued certain recruits. Faulty rappelling harnesses, malfunctioning safety gear, training rifles that jammed at critical moments, nothing that could ever be traced back to deliberate sabotage. Dr. Patricia Lawson, 44, base psychologist. Lawson provided the medical cover. False psychological evaluations, manufactured diagnoses of instability or unfitness. The paperwork that justified destroying careers. And at the top of the pyramid, General Douglas Hartwell himself. 58 years old, 35 years in uniform. Survivor of 3 wars and countless political battles. He'd built his empire piece by piece, installing loyalists in key positions, eliminating threats before they could organize, creating a culture of fear that silenced witnesses before they could speak. Maya documented everything. Audio devices in Morrison's office. Cameras in the training facility. Signal interceptors on the base network. Every conversation recorded. Every email captured. Every order preserved for the day when it would be used as evidence. But watching wasn't the same as doing nothing. She found Jessica Torres in the equipment room on her 4th day at Fort Ironwood. The young private was inspecting a rappelling harness, her hands moving with the careful precision of someone who'd been taught not to trust anything. Smart, Maya thought. Someone had trained her well, but not well enough. That harness has a defect, Maya said quietly. Jessica jumped, nearly dropping the equipment. Her eyes scanned Maya's uniform, cataloging the captain's bars, the logistics insignia, the unremarkable appearance. Ma'am, I checked it twice. Regulation inspection protocol. Check the secondary line. Third loop from the anchor point. Jessica's fingers found the cut. Her face went pale. The color drained from her cheeks as she understood what she was holding, equipment that would have held for the first few minutes of a rappelling exercise, then failed catastrophically when she was 40 feet off the ground. This would have... Her voice trailed off. Yes, Maya said simply. It would have. But I don't understand. I check everything. I always check everything. My mother taught me. Your mother taught you to survive. That's why you're still standing. Maya stepped closer, dropping her voice. Someone on this base wants you to fail Private Torres. Or worse, they've wanted it since the day you arrived. Jessica's eyes widened. You know about... I know about all of it. The impossible standards. The training accidents that aren't accidents. The evaluations that ignore your scores and focus on fabricated deficiencies. Maya met her gaze steadily. I know what they're doing to you, and I know why. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. Because you're excellent. Because you're the kind of soldier this army desperately needs. Because your scores threaten the men who believe women don't belong in combat roles. Maya paused. And because small, cruel men are always threatened by anyone who proves them wrong. Jessica's jaw tightened. Maya watched her fight back tears, not of weakness, but of frustration, of rage at the injustice she'd been suffering in silence. What do I do if I report this? Morrison will bury it. Hartwell will. You survive. You keep your head down. You trust that someone is watching. Maya pressed a small object into her palm, a communication device disguised as a religious medal. If you're ever in immediate danger, press the center. Help will come. Who are you? Jessica asked. Really? Maya smiled. It was the first genuine smile she'd allowed herself since arriving at Fort Ironwood. Just an old woman who's seen this before, and survived it. The surveillance footage from Morrison's office arrived at Phantom Division headquarters 3 hours later. She's accelerating. Maya's voice was tight as she spoke into the secure satellite phone. The Torres evaluation isn't scheduled for 2 weeks, but they're moving up the timeline. Something spooked them. Patterson's voice crackled through the encrypted connection. What kind of something? I don't know yet. But Morrison's been having closed-door meetings with Hartwell twice a day. Stone's been reviewing Jessica's psychological file obsessively. Drake's already modified the equipment for the evaluation. Maya paused. They're planning something bigger than a training accident. How much bigger? Big enough that they're discussing disposal. Silence on the line. Patterson was processing, calculating, weighing options. Can you document it? I'm documenting everything. But we're running out of time. If they move before we're ready, then we'll be ready faster. I'm authorizing additional resources. Federal teams on standby. Legal frameworks prepared. Whatever you need. I need more time, or fewer bodies to protect. Maya. Patterson's voice carried the weight of 50 years of impossible choices. I know what you're asking, and I know you know the answer. We don't sacrifice potential cases for individual rescues. The mission is the machine, not the cog. She's not a cog, Robert. She's a 23-year-old soldier whose only crime is being too good at her job. I know who she is. His voice softened. I know whose daughter she is. But if we blow our cover to save one person, the machine keeps running. Hartwell gets lawyers and political protection. The network adapts and goes underground. 100 more soldiers suffer because we couldn't be patient. Maya closed her eyes. She'd made this calculation herself 100 times. The math never got easier. 2 weeks, she said finally. Give me 2 weeks to build the case. But if she's in immediate danger before then you do what you have to do. Just understand the consequences. Maya ended the call and sat in silence for a long moment. Outside her window, Fort Ironwood's training grounds sprawled under the Arizona sun. Somewhere out there, Jessica Torres was preparing for an evaluation that might kill her. Somewhere out there, men were planning her destruction, and somewhere between the mission and the soldier, Maya would have to make a choice. She'd made that choice before. It never got easier. Day 7 brought Morrison to her supply closet. He appeared without warning, filling the doorway of the small office she'd been assigned. His presence was deliberately intimidating, blocking the exit, invading her space, asserting dominance through physical positioning. Maya didn't flinch. She'd faced worse in places whose names were still classified. "You ask a lot of questions for a logistics officer," Morrison said. "I'm thorough, sir. It's why I've survived 30 years in uniform." Survived? He stepped closer. That's an interesting word choice. Most officers your age would say, served. But you said, survived. Maya kept her expression neutral, slightly nervous. The mask of a woman who'd learned to avoid confrontation. "We all survive in our own ways, sir." Morrison's eyes narrowed. He was suspicious not enough to act, but enough to probe. "You've been having conversations with trainees, Private Torres specifically. I encountered her in the equipment room, asked if she needed help finding supplies." "That's not what I heard." Maya's heart rate stayed steady. Her hands stayed still. 28 years of training made deception as natural as breathing. "I'm not sure what you heard, sir, but I'm just a logistics officer. Supply requisitions and inventory management. I don't have conversations that would interest anyone." Morrison studied her for a long moment. Maya let him look, let him see exactly what he expected to see: a middle-aged woman, tired and worn down, counting the days until retirement. No threat, no interest, no value. "Stay in your lane, Captain Williams." His voice dropped to something that might have been a warning, or might have been a threat. "Supply closets and paperwork. That's where old women belong." He left without waiting for a response. Maya sat motionless for a full minute after the door closed, listening to his footsteps fade, confirming she was alone. Then she allowed herself a small, cold smile. Morrison had just made his first mistake. He'd noticed her, he'd investigated her, and he'd decided she wasn't worth his attention. That was exactly what she needed. The footage that changed everything arrived on day 10. Maya was reviewing the day's surveillance captures when the audio file flagged itself for priority analysis. Hartwell's private office. Closed-door meeting. 4 participants, Hartwell, Morrison, Stone, and a voice the system identified as Major General William Crawford, calling in from Pentagon Secure Communications. "The Torres situation is becoming complicated." Hartwell's voice. Calm. Measured. The voice of a man discussing logistics rather than lives. Crawford's response crackled through the connection. "Complicated. How?" "She won't break. 3 months of systematic pressure and she keeps performing. Keeps exceeding standards. Keeps making the men around her look bad by comparison. Then increase the pressure. We have. Equipment failures, psych evaluations, training incidents. She adapts, overcomes, keeps going." Hartwell's voice took on an edge of frustration. "She's becoming a symbol. The other female recruits watch her. They're starting to think they can succeed too. That can't be allowed." "No, it can't." A pause. Maya could hear papers shuffling, the creak of a leather chair. "What are you proposing?" Crawford asked. "The evaluation next week. We'll rig it completely. Not just difficult, impossible. And when she fails publicly comprehensively in front of the entire training battalion, we'll have medical grounds for immediate discharge. And if she doesn't fail, silence. The kind of silence that said more than words ever could." "We've made contingency arrangements." Morrison's voice now. "Training accidents happen. Equipment fails. In the chaos of a combat evaluation, sometimes soldiers get hurt. Sometimes they don't recover." Maya's blood ran cold. She'd suspected. Now she knew. Is that authorized? Crawford's voice was careful, a man covering himself for future deniability. The evaluation is authorized, Hartwell replied. The specific outcomes, those are operational details, below your pay grade. I understand. Crawford's tone made clear that he understood exactly what was being planned and was choosing not to stop it. Keep me informed of results. And General, this conversation didn't happen. Of course, sir, this conversation didn't happen. The line went dead. Maya sat in the darkness of her quarters, listening to the recording play again, and again, and again. 1 week. Jessica Torres had 1 week to live. Unless Maya burned her cover, abandoned the mission, and saved one soldier at the cost of letting 100 more suffer in the future. Or unless she found another way. The secure line to Patterson connected at 0200 hours. I need extraction authorization, Maya said without preamble. Not for me, for the Torres girl. Explain. They're not just planning to wash her out. They're planning to kill her. I have recorded evidence. Hartwell, Morrison, Crawford at the Pentagon. Conspiracy to commit murder under color of military authority. She heard Patterson inhale sharply. Crawford's involved. Deep enough to need deniability, not deep enough to stop it. That changes things. Patterson's voice was calculating now. Crawford's been on our target list for 3 years. If we can connect him to Hartwell's operation, we can. But it won't matter if Jessica Torres is dead. Maya, don't. Her voice cracked just slightly. Don't tell me about the bigger picture. Don't tell me about the machine versus the cog. I've made that calculation. I've lived with the consequences. But I'm looking at a recording of men casually planning to murder a 23-year-old woman because she's too good at her job, and I am asking you as someone who owes her mother a debt to help me find another way. Silence on the line. Seconds stretched into eternities. What do you need? Move up the federal teams. Have them ready for deployment within 72 hours. I'll manufacture a crisis that forces Hartwell to act in the open. When he does, we take down the entire network at once. That's not the plan. The plan is about to get a soldier killed. I'm offering you a better plan. More silence. Then, what kind of crisis? Maya closed her eyes, saw the faces in the files. 127 victims. 23 careers destroyed. 1 suicide. 1 murder being planned. The kind that makes Hartwell lose control. The kind that makes him show everyone exactly what he is. She paused. The kind that ends with him on the ground screaming while the whole world watches. Patterson was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was soft, almost gentle. You're planning to blow your cover. I'm planning to save a soldier. My cover is secondary. Your cover is 20 years of invisible service. Your cover is the only protection you have. My protection has always been the same thing, Robert. Maya's voice hardened. My ability to do what needs to be done, regardless of the cost. Patterson sighed, the sound of a man who'd made impossible choices for 50 years and recognized another one when he saw it. Federal teams will be in position within 48 hours. Legal frameworks are prepared. The moment you give the signal, the moment Hartwell touches Jessica Torres, his world burns down, and I'll be the one holding the match. The next 72 hours were the longest of Maya's career. She watched Jessica struggle through training exercises rigged for failure, watched Morrison smirk as equipment malfunctioned at critical moments, watched Stone's careful psychological warfare, the isolation, the whispered doubts, the systematic erosion of confidence. And through it all, she watched Jessica refuse to break. The young woman adapted, overcame, kept going when any reasonable person would have quit. Her mother's strength, Maya realized, the same strength that had pulled Robert Patterson from a burning vehicle in Fallujah. Some things really did run in the blood. The evaluation was scheduled for 0800 on day 14. By 0600, Maya had confirmed all the pieces were in place. Federal teams at staging areas, legal warrants prepared, Satellite coverage of the base active. Every exit monitored, every communication intercepted. The trap was set. All that remained was the bait. At Euro 7:55, Maya took her position at the back of the combat training arena. 200 soldiers filled the observation areas. Morrison and Stone flanked Hartwell in the command deck. Drake stood near the equipment station, hands steady on gear that would fail at precisely the wrong moment. Jessica Torres walked onto the arena floor at exactly 0758. Combat ready. Jaw set. The look of a soldier who knew she was walking into an ambush but refused to retreat. Maya felt something shift in her chest. Pride, maybe. Or recognition. She'd worn that same expression 30 years ago when men like Hartwell had tried to break her. The evaluation began, and for the next 47 minutes, Maya watched a 23-year-old woman fight for her life against a system designed to destroy her. Jessica conquered the obstacle course despite equipment that malfunctioned at critical moments. She passed the combat simulation despite opposition force soldiers who hit harder than regulations allowed. She solved tactical problems despite scenarios designed to have no correct answer. By 0845, she was bleeding from a split lip and favoring her left leg, but her scores were passing. Her performance was excellent. Despite everything they'd thrown at her, she was winning. Maya saw the moment Hartwell decided it wasn't enough. His face darkened. His jaw tightened. He rose from his observation seat and walked onto the arena floor. 200 soldiers fell silent. General Douglas Hartwell, commander of Fort Ironwood, approached a bleeding, exhausted private who refused to quit. His boots echoed on the concrete. His shadow fell across her like a death sentence. "Private Torres," his voice carried across the arena. "Your performance is adequate." Jessica stood at attention, chest heaving. "Thank you, sir." But adequacy isn't enough for soldiers who can't maintain their equipment. He gestured toward her rappelling harness, the replacement she'd obtained after Maya's warning. "That harness is non-regulation." "Sir, the original equipment had a defect. Are you questioning your training cadre?" His voice rose. "Are you suggesting that trained NCOs don't know how to maintain equipment?" "No, sir. I'm saying..." "You're saying you know better than soldiers with decades of experience." He stepped closer. "You're saying a 23-year-old girl knows more than the men who built this institution." Maya's hand moved toward the communication device in her pocket. 3 words and federal teams would breach every gate on the base, but she waited. Hartwell hadn't committed yet. Hadn't crossed the line from verbal abuse to physical assault. Without that clear violation, the case was still circumstantial. She needed him to act. She needed him to show everyone exactly what he was. "You want to be a soldier?" Hartwell's voice echoed through the arena. "Fine. Let's see if you can take a hit like one." His boot drew back, 3 inches from Jessica Torres's ribs. And that was when Maya Chen stopped being invisible. The boot never connected. Maya crossed 30 feet of arena floor in less than 3 seconds. Her body moved with the muscle memory of 28 years of combat training, her mind calculating angles, leverage points, and the precise amount of force needed to incapacitate without killing. Hartwell didn't see her coming. None of them did. Her left hand caught his ankle mid-swing. Her right hand seized his uniform collar. A sharp rotation of her hips, a transfer of momentum, and 230 pounds of decorated general crashed into the Arizona dust with a sound like a side of beef hitting concrete. Before he could process what had happened, Maya had his arm locked behind his back elbow, hyperextended to the point where 1 more inch of pressure would cause permanent damage. "What the hell?" Hartwell's voice was pure disbelief. "Get off me, Morrison." "I wouldn't move, General." Maya's voice was calm, almost conversational. "The human elbow wasn't designed to bend this direction. If you struggle, I'll demonstrate exactly how far it can go before something breaks." 200 soldiers stood frozen. The silence was absolute. Morrison finally found his voice. "Captain Williams, have you lost your mind? Release General Hartwell immediately." Maya didn't look up. "My name isn't Captain Williams, Colonel Morrison, and I'd suggest you stay exactly where you are." "This is insane." Morrison's hand moved toward his sidearm. "You're assaulting a superior officer. You'll spend the rest of your life in Leavenworth." "I don't think so." She increased the pressure on Hartwell's arm. He screamed. "What do you want?" He gasped between ragged breaths. "Money. A transfer. Whatever it is, we can negotiate." "I want you to stop screaming long enough to hear me, General." Maya's voice hardened. "I'm going to tell you who I am, and then I'm going to tell you what happens next. If you interrupt me, I'll break your arm. Do you understand?" Hartwell went still. Not compliance calculation. Maya could feel him measuring options, looking for escape routes. "I understand." "Good. My name is Commander Maya Chen, United States Navy retired. Call sign Spectre. I've spent the last 3 weeks documenting every crime you've committed at this installation. The equipment sabotage, the false psychological evaluations, the systematic targeting of female recruits, the 4 attempted suicides and 1 successful one." She paused. "And the murder you were planning to commit this morning." Hartwell's body tensed beneath her. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really? Let me refresh your memory." Maya's free hand pulled a small device from her pocket. She pressed a button, and Hartwell's own voice filled the arena. "The Torres situation is becoming complicated. She won't break. If she doesn't fail publicly, we've made contingency arrangements. Training accidents happen. Sometimes soldiers get hurt. Sometimes they don't recover." The recording echoed off the walls. 200 soldiers heard their commanding general casually discussing murder. Morrison's face went white. Stone took a step backward. Drake was already looking for exits. "That's inadmissible," Hartwell snarled. "Illegal surveillance. No court will accept." "Federal courts operate under different rules than you're used to, General, especially when the surveillance was authorized by the Secretary of Defense." That stopped him cold. "You're lying." "Am I?" Maya glanced toward the arena entrance. "Those are federal agents entering through the main gate right now. They have warrants for your arrest. Colonel Morrison's arrest, Captain Stone's arrest, and Master Sergeant Drake's arrest. They also have warrants for Dr. Patricia Lawson and 11 other members of your network." As if on cue, the sound of vehicles reached the arena. Doors slamming, boots on concrete, radio chatter. "This isn't possible," Hartwell breathed. "I have protection. I have connections. The Armed Services Committee. Your brother-in-law resigned from the committee 3 hours ago. The Pentagon received copies of your surveillance footage at 0600 this morning. Major General Crawford is currently being interviewed by military intelligence about his participation in your conspiracy." Maya leaned closer. "Your protection is gone, General. Your connections have abandoned you. You're alone." For the first time, real fear flickered in Hartwell's eyes. "You can't do this to me. I served this country for 35 years. I fought in 3 wars. I've given everything. You've taken everything." Maya's voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. "You've taken careers. You've taken futures. You've taken one life that we know of, and almost took another today." She looked at Jessica Torres, still standing at attention, blood drying on her lip, eyes wide with shock. "Private Torres was going to die in a training accident this morning. An equipment failure. A tragic accident that no one could have prevented." Jessica's face drained of color. "Sir, ma'am, I don't." "You weren't supposed to survive this evaluation, Private. The equipment Master Sergeant Drake prepared would have failed during the high-altitude portion. A 40-foot fall onto concrete. Maybe survivable. Probably not." Jessica's hands started shaking. "That's a lie." Drake's voice cracked across the arena. I would never. Really." Maya turned her attention to him. "Would you like me to play the recording of you discussing the modification schedule with Colonel Morrison? The one where you specifically mention weakening the anchor points to fail under stress loading." Drake's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I want a lawyer." "You'll get one, after you're processed at the federal detention facility in Phoenix." Maya returned her attention to Hartwell. "Right now, I need you to stay very still while these officers place you under arrest. Can you do that, General?" Federal agents were flooding into the arena now. Dark tactical gear, FBI markings, weapons at the ready. They moved with practiced efficiency, securing exits, taking positions. A woman in a dark suit approached. Commander Chen. Agent Torres is secure. General Hartwell is ready for handcuffing. I'd recommend extra restraints. He's going to try to run the moment I release him. We're prepared. The agent signaled her team. General Douglas Hartwell, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder assault under color of authority and violations of federal civil rights statutes. You have the right to remain silent. Maya released the arm lock and stepped back. Two agents immediately pinned Hartwell's wrists and secured them with flex cuffs. He thrashed once, twice, then went still as he realized escape was impossible. This isn't over, he hissed as they hauled him to his feet. I have friends. I have resources. You think you've won, but you don't understand how this works. The system protects its own. Maya met his eyes calmly. The system just arrested you in front of 200 witnesses, General. Whatever protection you thought you had died the moment your boot moved toward that soldier. They dragged him toward the exit. He was still shouting threats, still promising consequences, still believing that somehow his power would save him. It wouldn't. Morrison went next, then Stone, then Drake. One by one, the architects of Hartwell's machine were cuffed and led away, while 200 soldiers watched in stunned silence. Finally, Maya allowed herself to breathe. Commander Chen. Jessica Torres' voice was barely a whisper. I don't understand what just happened. Maya turned to face her. The young woman was trembling now, the adrenaline of the evaluation mixing with the shock of near-death revelation. What happened is that you survived Private Torres. You survived 3 months of systematic abuse designed to break you. You survived an evaluation rigged for your failure. And you survived a murder plot by men who should have been protecting you. Maya stepped closer. What happened is that you're stronger than they ever imagined. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. My mother. You mentioned my mother. How do you know? Sergeant Maria Torres, Fallujah, 2004. She saved 3 soldiers from a burning vehicle, including a young colonel who would spend the next 20 years hunting predators like Hartwell. Maya's voice softened. Your mother is a hero, Private. She raised a hero. And today both of you proved that some things really do run in the blood. The tears spilled over. Jessica Torres, who had refused to break under 3 months of torture, finally allowed herself to cry. Maya put a hand on her shoulder and led her. The federal processing took 4 hours. By noon, Hartwell's entire inner circle was in custody. By evening, the story had leaked to the press. By the next morning, Fort Ironwood was on every news channel in America. But before any of that, before the interviews and the statements, and the endless paperwork, Maya had one more call to make. Patterson answered on the first ring. It's done, she said. I saw. His voice was thick with something she couldn't quite identify. The whole world saw. They're calling it the Fort Ironwood scandal. 3 networks are running special reports. The Secretary of Defense issued a statement condemning Hartwell's command and promising systematic reform. Good. You blew your cover, Maya. 20 years of invisible service exposed in 3 seconds. I know. Was it worth it? Maya looked across the base where federal agents were still cataloging evidence and interviewing witnesses. Somewhere in that chaos, Jessica Torres was giving her statement, telling the story of 3 months of abuse and 1 morning of salvation. Yes, Maya said quietly. It was worth it. Patterson was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, softer, more personal. Maria Torres called me an hour ago. She'd seen the news. She wanted to thank whoever saved her daughter. What did you tell her? I told her the debt was paid, 20 years late, but paid. He paused. She cried. Maya, a woman who pulled 3 soldiers from a burning vehicle and never shed a tear, cried when she heard her daughter was safe. Maya closed her eyes. Some debts really didn't expire. What happens now? Now you come home. The mission is complete. Hartwell's machine is destroyed. The network is exposed. Federal prosecutors will handle the rest. And me? You take some time off. Get some rest. Let the dust settle. Patterson's voice carried a weight that told her there was more coming. And then we talk about what's next. What's next? I'm 71 years old, Maya. I've been running Phantom Division for longer than most of these agents have been alive. The secretary is pushing for transition planning, succession protocols, someone to carry the mission forward when I'm gone. Maya understood. She'd always understood somewhere in the back of her mind that this moment was coming. You want me to take over? I want you to consider it. Not just operations, the whole initiative. Training the next generation, building the network, creating a system that outlives both of us. I'm 52 years old, and you've got more experience than anyone else in the division. More successful operations, more predators stopped, more soldiers saved. Patterson's voice hardened. You're the best operator I've ever trained, Maya. You're also the only one I'd trust with my life's work. Maya was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the cost of 28 years in the shadows. The marriage that had ended because she couldn't be present. The friendships that had withered because she couldn't explain her work. The normal life she'd sacrificed for a mission that never ended. Let me think about it. Take all the time you need. Patterson paused. But Maya, whatever you decide, know that what you did today mattered. Not just for Jessica Torres. For every soldier who will serve at Fort Ironwood in the years to come. For every woman who will enter a military career knowing that someone is watching the watchers. The mission doesn't end with one arrest. No, it doesn't. But it has to start somewhere. And today you gave it a hell of a start. The call ended. Maya sat in silence as the Arizona sun began to set, turning the sky the color of blood and fire. She thought about Patterson's offer, about the weight of 50 years of invisible service soon to be passed to the next generation, about the choice between rest and responsibility, between peace and purpose. But mostly, she thought about Jessica Torres, about the look on the young woman's face when she understood she was going to live, about the tears she'd finally allowed herself to cry after 3 months of refusing to break. That was why the mission mattered. That was why the sacrifice was worth it. Not the arrests, not the headlines, not the political consequences. The soldiers saved, the lives protected, the future preserved. Maya had spent 28 years as a weapon. Maybe it was time to become something else. Something that could multiply her impact train. Others create a legacy that would outlast her own service. She'd give Patterson her answer when she got back to Washington. But she already knew what it would be. The processing center was chaos when Maya arrived the next morning. Federal agents, military police JAG officers, and representatives from half a dozen agencies crowded the converted warehouse, all trying to establish jurisdiction over the biggest military scandal in a decade. Maya navigated through the confusion with practiced ease, heading for the interview rooms where the accused were being held. She found Morrison first. He was sitting in a metal chair, flex cuffs replaced by formal restraints, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. When he saw Maya enter, something shifted in his expression, fear mixing with hatred. "You," he breathed. "You planned this from the beginning." 3 weeks of planning, Maya confirmed. Though I'll admit, the final confrontation happened faster than I intended. Your boss forced my hand when he decided to kick a young woman in the ribs. He'll never see trial. You don't understand how the system works. There are people who have already abandoned him. Maya sat across from Morrison, studying him the way a scientist might study a specimen. Major General Crawford is cooperating with investigators. Senator Hartwell has issued a statement distancing himself from his brother-in-law. The Pentagon is in full damage control mode. She paused. Your protection evaporated the moment those recordings went public. Morrison's jaw tightened. What do you want? Information. The machine Hartwell built didn't create itself. I want to know who trained him, who mentored him, who created the playbook he followed. And if I cooperate, then maybe the federal prosecutors take that into consideration when recommending sentences. Maybe you serve 15 years instead of 25. Maybe you see the outside of a prison before you're too old to appreciate it." Morrison laughed bitterly. "You think I'm stupid enough to believe that you're not a prosecutor? You're not even law enforcement. You're a ghost who burned her cover to save one soldier. What leverage do you actually have?" Maya leaned forward. "I have every communication you've sent in the last 18 months. I have recordings of meetings you thought were private. I have testimony from 11 witnesses who saw you personally orchestrate the targeting of female recruits." Her voice dropped. "And I have the names of 3 women who attempted suicide because of the abuse you helped coordinate. One of them is prepared to testify about the specific threats you made when she tried to report the harassment." Morrison's face went pale. "That's not... I never..." "You stood in Private Chen's quarters on March 15th and told her that if she filed a complaint, you would personally ensure she was discharged with a psychological evaluation that would follow her for the rest of her life. You told her that no one would believe her. You told her that fighting back was pointless." Maya's voice was cold as stone. "She tried to overdose 3 days later. Would you like me to continue?" Morrison's mouth opened and closed. For the first time, Maya saw something besides arrogance and entitlement, genuine terror. "I was following orders," he whispered. "Whose orders? Hartwell's. Everything came from Hartwell. And Hartwell learned from someone who trained him, who showed him how to build this machine." Morrison was shaking now. The bravado of a career bully stripped away to reveal the coward underneath. Colonel Victor Steele, retired now. He was Hartwell's commanding officer at Fort Bragg in the 90s. He wrote the playbook, how to identify threats, how to neutralize them, how to build networks of loyal subordinates who would protect each other. Where is Steele now? I don't know. He dropped off the radar after retirement. But Hartwell mentioned him sometimes. Said Steele was proud of what he'd built. Said there were others installations all over the country using the same methods. Maya felt her blood run cold. How many? I don't know. Hartwell kept that compartmentalized, but he mentioned numbers once. 37 maybe. 37 installations where Steele's methods had been implemented. 37 installations. 37 machines grinding up soldiers. 37 networks of predators protecting each other. The scope of it was staggering. Names, Maya pressed. Give me names. I told you I don't know. You know more than you're telling me, Colonel. You were Hartwell's right hand for 5 years. You sat in on meetings, you heard conversations. You know things. She stood leaning over him. This is your one chance to help yourself. When you're sitting in a federal courtroom, the only thing that's going to matter is whether you cooperated or not. Choose carefully. Morrison's resistance crumbled. There's a list. Hartwell kept it in his personal safe. Names, locations, operational details. If you can access it. Where's the safe? His quarters. Private study. Behind the portrait of his grandfather. Maya was already moving toward the door. Wait. Morrison's voice cracked with desperation. If I gave you this, you'll tell the prosecutors. You'll tell them I cooperated. Maya paused at the threshold. I'll tell them you provided useful intelligence. What they do with that information is up to them. She left Morrison alone with his fear and headed for Hartwell's quarters. The safe was exactly where Morrison had said it would be. Maya cracked it in under 3 minutes. The combination was Hartwell's wedding anniversary, because predators were nothing if not predictable. Inside, she found the list. 37 installations, names of commanding officers, methods employed, numbers of victims documented, a network stretching across the entire military connected by shared philosophy and mutual protection. Maya photographed every page, transmitted the images to Patterson, and felt the weight of what she was seeing settle onto her shoulders. Fort Ironwood wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Hartwell was just one node in a system that had been building for decades. Taking him down had exposed the cancer, but the cancer had metastasized. It would take years, maybe decades, to burn it all out. Her phone buzzed. Patterson. I received the files, he said. 37 installations. At minimum, there may be more that Hartwell didn't know about. This changes the scope of the mission significantly. I know. Maya stared at the documents spread across Hartwell's desk. 37 installations. Thousands of potential victims. A war that would consume the rest of her career. I know what I need to do. You've made your decision. Yes. Maya closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of what she was accepting. I'll take the position. I'll run the division. I'll train the next generation of operators and build a system that can fight this war long after we're both gone. Patterson exhaled slowly. You understand what you're giving up. Any chance of a normal life, any hope of... I gave that up 28 years ago. Maya's voice was steady. The only question was whether I'd accept it or keep pretending I had options. Then welcome to the rest of your life, Director Chen. Patterson's voice carried something that might have been pride. We have work to do. The trial of General Douglas Hartwell began 6 weeks after his arrest. By that time, Maya was already back in Washington overseeing the transition of Phantom Division leadership and planning the operations that would follow. But before she left Fort Ironwood, she made one final visit. Jessica Torres was packing her quarters when Maya arrived. The young woman had been given medical leave to recover from her ordeal, followed by transfer to a new installation where she could complete her training without the shadow of Hartwell's machine. Commander Chen, Jessica snapped to attention. I didn't expect... Eddie's private. I'm not here officially. Jessica relaxed slightly, though her eyes remained alert. 3 months of surviving Hartwell's targeting had taught her to never fully let her guard down. I wanted to see you before I left, Maya continued, to make sure you're okay. I'm alive. That's more than I expected a week ago. It shouldn't have come that close. If I'd intervened earlier, you'd have saved me and let 100 others suffer. Jessica's voice was matter-of-fact. I understand operational priorities, ma'am. My mother explained it to me when I was 12. Some missions are bigger than any individual soldier. Maya studied the young woman with new appreciation. Your mother raised you well. She raised me to survive, and to fight back when fighting back matters. Jessica hesitated. Can I ask you something? Anything. What happens now? To all the others who weren't as lucky as me. The women who got washed out, discharged, broken. Maya thought about the files in her office, the list from Hartwell's safe, the scope of the war that lay ahead. Now we fight for them, she said quietly. Every career that was destroyed, every life that was damaged, every soldier who was failed by the system that was supposed to protect them. We fight until the people responsible are held accountable and the structures that allowed them to operate are torn down. That sounds like a long fight. It will be. Years. Maybe decades. Maya met her eyes. The question is whether you want to be part of it. Jessica's expression shifted. What do you mean? I mean that I'm looking for soldiers who understand what we're fighting. People who've survived the crucible and come out the other side stronger. People who can identify predators because they've been targeted by them. Maya paused. People like you. I'm a private, 23 years old. I don't have any special training. You have the most important qualification there is. You know what it feels like to be prey. That means you can spot a predator before anyone else sees them. Jessica was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was steady. What would I have to do? Finish your training. Complete your service obligation. Learn everything you can about how the military works officially and unofficially. And when you're ready, if you're still interested, reach out to a man named Colonel Robert Patterson. He'll know what to do with you. And you, Maya smiled. It was the first time she'd smiled since arriving at Fort Ironwood 3 weeks ago. I'll be watching, building the network, training the next generation, and making sure that when you're ready to join the fight, there's a place for you in it. She extended her hand. Jessica took it. Thank you, Commander, for everything. Don't thank me yet, Maya said. Thank me when we've won. She left Jessica Torres with that promise and drove off the Fort Ironwood grounds for the last time. Behind her, the remnants of Hartwell's machine were being dismantled piece by piece. Ahead of her, 37 more machines waited to be destroyed. The war was just beginning. The federal courtroom in Phoenix was standing room only on the morning General Douglas Hartwell's trial began. Every major network had cameras positioned outside. Every military affairs correspondent in the country had flown in for the opening statements. The story had grown beyond Fort Ironwood now, beyond one general and one installation, into something that threatened to crack open decades of institutional silence. Maya sat in the third row wearing civilian clothes for the first time in weeks. She'd been advised to stay away to let the prosecutors handle the public-facing work while she remained in the shadows where she belonged. She'd ignored that advice. Some things needed to be witnessed. Hartwell entered through a side door flanked by federal marshals. He'd lost weight in the 6 weeks since his arrest. The medals were gone, replaced by an orange jumpsuit that hung loose on his frame. But his eyes still held that familiar arrogance, that unshakable belief that somehow, some way, he would escape the consequences of his actions. He scanned the gallery and found Maya's face. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, hatred, and underneath it all, fear. Good, Maya thought. He should be afraid. The lead prosecutor was a woman named Catherine Reeves, a former JAG officer who'd left military service after seeing too many cases buried by command interference. She'd spent 15 years in the civilian justice system, building a reputation as someone who didn't back down, didn't make deals, and didn't lose. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Reeves began, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed courtroom. The evidence you will see in this trial documents a systematic campaign of abuse, intimidation, and attempted murder conducted by a decorated military officer against the very soldiers he was sworn to protect. Hartwell's defense attorney started to rise. The judge waved him down. Over the course of 18 months, General Douglas Hartwell and his co-conspirators targeted 127 soldiers for abuse. They sabotaged equipment. They falsified psychological evaluations. They created a culture of fear so pervasive that victims were afraid to report and witnesses were afraid to speak. Reeves paused, letting the words settle. And when one young woman proved too strong to break, they planned to kill her. The courtroom stirred. Hartwell's jaw tightened. You will hear testimony from survivors. You will see documents proving deliberate conspiracy. You will hear recordings of General Hartwell himself discussing the elimination of a soldier whose only crime was excellence. Reeves turned to face the jury directly. And when you have seen all of this evidence, I am confident you will reach the only verdict that justice permits. The defense attorney rose before Reeves had fully taken her seat. His name was Theodore Walsh, and he'd built a career defending powerful men accused of terrible things. He was expensive, connected, and completely without shame. Members of the jury, what you're about to witness is not a pursuit of justice, it's a witch hunt. Maya's hands tightened on the armrest of her seat. General Hartwell served this country for 35 years. He led soldiers in combat. He earned decorations for bravery. He dedicated his life to building the next generation of American warriors. Walsh's voice dripped with manufactured sympathy. And now, because some people didn't like his training methods, he's being treated like a common criminal. The recordings you'll hear were obtained through illegal surveillance. The witnesses you'll see have been coached by federal agents with a political agenda. The so-called victims are soldiers who couldn't handle the demands of military service and are now looking for someone to blame. Walsh spread his hands. This case isn't about justice. It's about destroying a hero because his methods made some people uncomfortable. Maya felt sick. She'd expected this defense had been briefed on Walsh's likely strategy, but hearing it spoken aloud was something else entirely. Every word was designed to shift blame from the predator to the prey. The first witness was Private Elena Vasquez, one of the soldiers who'd been medically discharged after a training accident left her with a permanent limp. She was 24 years old with dark hair and darker eyes that held the weight of everything she'd survived. Private Vasquez, Reeves began gently. Can you describe the training exercise on March 15th of last year? Elena's voice was steady, but Maya could see her hands shaking in her lap. It was a rappelling exercise, standard procedure. I'd done it dozens of times before. What happened that day? My equipment failed. The primary anchor released when I was 40 feet up. I fell. Were you injured? Broken leg, 3 fractures. Torn ligaments. Elena paused. The doctor said I was lucky to survive. A few feet higher and the impact would have been fatal. Did you inspect your equipment before the exercise? Yes, ma'am. I always inspect my equipment. My mother taught me that. And was there any defect visible during your inspection? No. The equipment looked perfect. Elena's voice hardened. But later, after I was discharged, I obtained the maintenance records. The anchor assembly had been modified 2 days before the exercise. Someone had weakened the release mechanism. Walsh was on his feet immediately. Objection. The witness is speculating about mechanical modifications she has no expertise to evaluate. Your Honor, Private Vasquez has submitted a sworn statement from a certified equipment inspector confirming that the modifications were deliberate and could not have occurred through normal wear. The judge nodded. The objection is overruled. Continue. Elena continued. She described the harassment that had preceded the accident, the impossible standards, the false evaluations, the whispered threats from Morrison and Stone. They told me I didn't belong, she said quietly, that women like me were weakening the military, that if I didn't quit voluntarily, they would find a way to make me leave. And when you reported these threats, my commanding officer told me to toughen up. He said the military wasn't a place for people who couldn't handle criticism. Elena's eyes found Hartwell in the defendant's seat. He said I was imagining things, that no one was targeting me, that I was paranoid. And 6 weeks later, you fell 40 feet and almost died. Yes, ma'am. Walsh's cross-examination was brutal. He questioned Elena's mental stability. He suggested she had a history of complaints. He implied that her injuries were the result of her own carelessness, not deliberate sabotage. Elena held her ground. Every attack she deflected, every insinuation she refuted with calm precision. By the time she left the witness stand, Maya was certain the jury believed her. The trial continued for 3 weeks. Witness after witness took the stand. Soldiers who'd been broken, officers who'd been forced out, families who'd lost loved ones to training accidents that weren't accidents. Jessica Torres testified on day 15. Maya watched from the gallery as the young woman she'd saved took the oath and settled into the witness chair. Jessica had changed in the weeks since Fort Ironwood. The haunted look was gone, replaced by something harder and more certain. Private Torres, Reeves said, "Can you describe the events of September 12th? Yes, ma'am. Jessica's voice was clear and strong. I was participating in a combat evaluation. The exercise had been running for approximately 45 minutes when General Hartwell entered the arena. What happened when he approached you? He criticized my equipment, said my rappelling harness was non-regulation. When I tried to explain that I'd replaced the original harness because it had been sabotaged, he became aggressive. Aggressive how? He called me weak, said women didn't belong in combat roles, said I needed to learn to take a hit like a soldier." Jessica paused. Then he tried to kick me. Tried. Commander Maya Chen intervened. She stopped the attack and restrained General Hartwell until federal agents arrived. Walsh's cross-examination of Jessica was even more aggressive than his attack on Elena. He questioned her mental state. He suggested she had exaggerated the threat. He implied that Hartwell's actions had been taken out of context. Isn't it true, Private Torres, that General Hartwell was simply demonstrating a combat technique, that his foot never actually made contact with your body? Jessica met Walsh's eyes without flinching. His boot was 3 inches from my ribs when Commander Chen stopped him. The intent was clear. The only reason I'm not in a hospital right now is because someone intervened. Someone. A woman who was conducting illegal surveillance of military operations. A woman who has refused to testify in this trial. A woman who saved my life. Jessica's voice cut through Walsh's rhetoric like a blade. Whatever methods she used, whatever protocols she violated, the result is that I'm sitting here today instead of lying in a morgue. I'll let the jury decide which matters more. The courtroom stirred. Walsh's face reddened. No further questions. Maya felt something warm spread through her chest. Pride, maybe, or hope. The defense called its own witnesses. Character references who praised Hartwell's service. Officers who claimed his training methods produced superior soldiers. Experts who questioned the validity of the surveillance evidence. None of it mattered. On day 18, the prosecution played the recording. Hartwell's own voice filled the courtroom, casual and confident, discussing the elimination of a 23-year-old soldier, as if planning a maintenance schedule. The Torres situation is becoming complicated. She won't break. If she doesn't fail publicly, we've made contingency arrangements. Training accidents happen. Sometimes soldiers get hurt. Sometimes they don't recover. The jury listened in absolute silence. When the recording ended, several of them were staring at Hartwell with undisguised horror. Walsh's closing argument was desperate. He attacked the chain of evidence. He questioned the motives of the prosecution. He painted Hartwell as a victim of political correctness and institutional cowardice. Reeves's closing was simple. 127 victims, 23 careers destroyed, 1 suicide, 1 attempted murder. She looked at each juror in turn. The evidence speaks for itself. General Hartwell built a machine designed to break soldiers, and when one soldier proved too strong to break, he tried to kill her. That is not leadership. That is not training. That is predation. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Maya was in the gallery when they returned. She watched Hartwell's face as the foreman read the verdicts. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit murder. Assault under color of authority. Civil rights violations. Obstruction of justice. Every charge the prosecution had filed, the jury affirmed. Hartwell's expression crumbled. For the first time since his arrest, the arrogance disappeared completely, replaced by the naked terror of a man who understood his world had ended. The sentencing came 3 days later. 35 years at Fort Leavenworth. Dishonorable discharge. Forfeiture of all benefits, pension, and honors. Maya watched the marshals lead him away. He was screaming now, shouting about appeals and injustice and conspiracies against him. No one was listening. Morrison received 18 years. Stone received 12. Drake received 8. Lawson received 6 and lost her medical license permanently. The machine was dismantled. The predators were caged. But Maya knew it wasn't over. She flew back to Washington the day after sentencing. Patterson was waiting for her at the Phantom Division facility, the list from Hartwell's safe spread across his desk. 37 installations, he said without preamble. I've been reviewing the intelligence. Some of these networks are more sophisticated than Hartwell's. Some have been operating for decades. Where do we start? Patterson pulled a file from the stack. Fort Sentinel, New Mexico. Commanding officer is Colonel Richard Hayes. His operation is smaller than Hartwell's, but more disciplined. Fewer victims, but more complete destruction of the ones he targets. Maya opened the file. More young faces stared back at her. More careers being ground to dust. Timeline. As soon as you're ready. But Maya, Patterson hesitated. This operation will be different. You can't go in alone anymore. Your face was on every news channel during the trial. Your cover is blown permanently. I know. You'll need to build a team. Train operators, coordinate multiple simultaneous insertions. He met her eyes. You'll need to be a director, not just an agent. Maya nodded slowly. She'd known this was coming. The war ahead was too big for one person, no matter how skilled. I'll need resources. Personnel. The authority to recruit from outside normal channels. You'll have it. The Secretary of Defense signed the authorization this morning. Phantom Division is being restructured, expanded, given priority access to intelligence and law enforcement cooperation. And you, Patterson smiled. It was a tired smile, the expression of a man who'd carried a burden for 50 years and was finally seeing the possibility of setting it down. I'll be here as long as you need me. Advisor, mentor, institutional memory. He reached across the desk and gripped her hand. But the mission is yours now, Maya. The next chapter of this war, you'll write it. Maya looked at the files spread across the desk. 37 installations. Hundreds of potential victims. A war that would consume years of her life. When do I start? You already have. The recruitment began the following week. Maya reviewed personnel files, interviewed candidates, assessed operators from every branch of the military. She was looking for specific qualities: experience with undercover work, psychological resilience, and something harder to define: the ability to recognize predators because they'd survived predators themselves. Her first recruit surprised everyone, including herself. Jessica Torres appeared at the Phantom Division facility 6 months after the trial. She'd completed her training with honors, earned early promotion to specialist, and requested transfer to a classified intelligence position. "You said to reach out when I was ready," Jessica said. "I'm ready." Maya studied the young woman across the desk. Jessica had grown into her confidence. The haunted uncertainty was gone, completely replaced by the steady focus of someone who knew exactly what she wanted and why. "You understand what this work involves: deep cover operations, extended isolation, missions that will never appear in any record." "I understand." "You understand that if you're captured, we can't acknowledge you. That if something goes wrong, your family will never know what happened to you." "My mother understands. She gave her blessing." Jessica met Maya's eyes without flinching. "She said that some debts are paid forward, not back. She saved Colonel Patterson's life. You saved mine. Now it's my turn to save someone else." Maya felt the weight of legacy settling into place. 3 generations now: Maria Torres, who'd bled in Fallujah; Maya Chen, who'd hunted in the shadows; Jessica Torres, who would carry the mission forward. "Training starts tomorrow. Report at 0500. Jessica's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Relief, maybe, or determination. "Yes, ma'am." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Commander Chen, thank you for everything." "Don't thank me yet," Maya said. "Thank me when we've won." The first coordinated operation launched 3 months later. Fort Sentinel, New Mexico; Fort Campbell, Kentucky; Fort Richardson, Alaska. 3 installations, 3 networks, 3 teams inserting simultaneously. Maya coordinated from Washington, watching the feeds as her operators moved into position. Jessica was part of the Fort Sentinel team, the youngest member of the squad, her cover legend, identifying her as a troubled soldier transferred for behavioral issues. The same playbook Maya had used at Fort Ironwood. The same vulnerability that predators couldn't resist targeting. "Spectre, this is Shadow 1. Jessica's voice came through the secure channel. "In position. Target has made initial contact." "Copy, Shadow 1. Maintain cover. Document everything." The operation ran for 6 weeks. 6 weeks of surveillance evidence gathering and careful preparation. When the strike came, it was coordinated to the minute. 3 networks dismantled. 47 officers arrested. 183 careers saved. Maya watched the after-action reports come in and felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The war wasn't over. 34 installations still remained on the list. New networks were surely forming even as old ones fell. The cancer in the system wouldn't be eradicated in months or even years. But for the first time, Maya believed it could be eradicated. She thought about Patterson still serving at 71, because no one else could carry the mission. She thought about Maria Torres bleeding in Fallujah to save strangers. She thought about Jessica carrying the torch forward into a future Maya might never see. That was legacy. Not medals or recognition. Not public glory or political power. Just an unbroken chain of warriors protecting warriors, each generation lifting the next higher than they climbed. Hartwell had tried to build monuments to his own ego. He'd broken soldiers to prove his strength, created victims to feed his need for dominance. He'd left nothing but wreckage. Patterson had built operators, mentors, protectors, each one multiplying his impact, each one saving dozens more. He'd left an army. Maya would do the same. Train the next generation. Build the network. Create a system that would outlast her own service. The phone on her desk buzzed. Patterson's extension. "Director Chen, we have a situation. New intelligence from Fort Bragg. Colonel Victor Steele has surfaced." Maya's blood ran cold. Steele, the man Morrison had named, the architect of the original playbook, The teacher who'd trained Hartwell and who knew how many others. Where is he? Consulting contract with a private military company, Defense Department liaison. He's been advising installations all over the country. He's still active, still spreading the disease. It appears so. The scope is larger than we estimated. This isn't 37 installations, Maya. It's a philosophy, a doctrine, something that's been passed down through generations of commanders. Maya closed her eyes. The war had just gotten bigger. What do you need from me? I need you to hunt him, not just arrest him. Find out everything he knows, every officer he trained, every installation he influenced, every piece of his network. Patterson's voice carried 50 years of patience and determination. Steele is patient zero. If we can take him down completely, we can start treating the disease at its source. Maya opened her eyes. Through the window of her office, she could see the operations center where her team was processing intelligence from 3 successful operations. 34 installations on the active list. 1 architect still walking free. I'll need time, resources, authority to operate beyond normal parameters. You have whatever you need. And I'll need Jessica Torres. She's proven herself. It's time she learned how we hunt the big ones. Patterson was quiet for a moment. Are you sure she's ready? Maya thought about the young woman who'd refused to break under 3 months of torture, who'd testified against her tormentors without flinching, who'd chosen to fight back instead of walking away. She was born ready. She just needed someone to show her the path. The hunt for Victor Steele would begin in the morning. Tonight, Maya allowed herself 1 moment of reflection. She pulled up the photograph on her computer. 3 generations. Maria Torres, dust-covered in Fallujah. Maya Chen, anonymous in a logistics uniform. Jessica Torres, standing tall in her graduation portrait. That was the real weapon, not the surveillance equipment or the federal warrants or the tactical training. The chain of warriors who refused to let predators win, the legacy that passed from one generation to the next. Hartwell was in prison. His machine was dismantled. His network was exposed. But the war continued, and so did the warriors. Colonel Victor Steele was a ghost who didn't want to stay dead. Maya spent 3 weeks tracking him through a maze of shell companies, consulting contracts, and government liaisons that led nowhere and everywhere at once. The man had spent 40 years building a network, and he'd learned to hide his tracks, the way predators always did, behind layers of legitimacy and institutional protection. He's consulting for Black Ridge Security, Jessica reported during their morning briefing. Private military contractor. Defense Department contracts worth $400 million a year. Protection, Maya muttered. He's wrapped himself in so many layers of money and influence that touching him means touching everyone who profits from him. So what do we do? Maya studied the intelligence spread across her desk. Steele's network was vast, but networks had weak points. People talked. People made mistakes. People got scared. We find someone who's more afraid of us than they are of him. The weak point turned out to be a woman named Colonel Sandra Price, 51, currently commanding the training division at Fort Bragg. Price had been one of Steele's protégés in the 90s. She'd risen through the ranks using his methods, building her own machine, breaking her own soldiers. But Price had made a mistake 3 months ago. A recruit she'd targeted had connections. Political connections. The kind of connections that could end careers and start investigations. Now Price was scared, and scared people made deals. Maya flew to North Carolina alone. Patterson had argued against it, had wanted her to send an operator to stay safe in Washington, where directors belonged. She'd ignored him. Some conversations needed to happen face to face. Price agreed to meet at a hotel bar in Fayetteville, the kind of anonymous location where military officers went to discuss things they didn't want overheard. She was already there when Maya arrived nursing a drink that looked like it wasn't her first. Commander Chen. Price's voice was tight. Or should I say Director Chen now? Either works. Maya sat across from her. Thank you for meeting me. Did I have a choice? Price's laugh was bitter. My lawyer says you have enough to end my career. My career. After 30 years of service. Your career ended the moment you decided to destroy soldiers instead of building them. I'm just making it official. Price's jaw tightened. You don't understand. The pressure we're under, sure. The standards we're expected to maintain. When recruits can't perform, stop. Maya's voice cut through the excuse like a blade. I've heard this speech before. From Hartwell, from Morrison, from every predator who convinced themselves they were doing something necessary. She leaned forward. The soldiers you broke weren't weak. They were targeted. There's a difference. Price was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, smaller, more honest. What do you want? Victor Steele. Everything you know about him, his methods, his network, the people he trained, and where they are now. Steele is untouchable. He has protection at levels you can't imagine. Hartwell thought he was untouchable too. He's currently in year 1 of a 35-year sentence. Price flinched. That's different. Hartwell was sloppy. Steele is the reason any of this exists. He built the system. He trained everyone. He's been doing this since before you were born. Then it's time he stopped. Price studied Maya with something that might have been respect or might have been fear. Why should I help you? What's in it for me? Reduced charges, minimum security facility, the possibility of seeing your grandchildren before they graduate college. Maya paused. Or we do this the other way. Full prosecution, maximum sentences, your name in every headline alongside Hartwell's. That's not a choice. That's blackmail. It's consequences, something you should have considered before you started destroying careers. Price's hand trembled as she lifted her drink. She took a long swallow, set the glass down, and met Maya's eyes. Steele has a compound in Montana, off the grid. That's where he runs his consulting operation, where he trains the people he recruits. But it's more than that. Price's voice dropped. He keeps records, documentation of everyone he's ever trained. Every installation he's influenced, every officer who uses his methods. Maya felt her pulse quicken. How do you know this? Because I was there, 5 years ago. He invited me for what he called a leadership retreat. 3 days of indoctrination. That's when I saw the files. Price shook her head. He's proud of what he's built. He wants it documented. He wants history to remember him as the man who saved the military from weakness. The files, are they physical, digital? Both. He's paranoid about security, but he's also old-fashioned. Hard copies of everything important, stored in a vault at the compound. Maya's mind was already racing. A compound in Montana. Records of the entire network. The evidence needed to take down not just Steele, but everyone he'd ever trained. I need the location, exact coordinates, security details, everything you can remember. And in exchange, you get the deal I offered. But Colonel, Maya's voice hardened. If you're lying to me, if this is a trap, if you're warning Steele that I'm coming, there won't be a deal, there won't be a trial. There will just be consequences. Price's face went pale. I'm not lying. I want out. I've wanted out for years, but I didn't know how. Steele's network, it's like a web. Once you're in, you can never leave. You're leaving now. The coordinates arrived by encrypted message the next morning. Maya verified them through satellite imagery, cross-referenced them with property records, and confirmed that a corporation connected to Black Ridge Security owned the land. The compound was real. We need a full tactical team, Patterson said during their planning session. Federal warrants, military police support. This isn't a surveillance operation, Maya. This is a takedown. A full tactical team means weeks of coordination, legal reviews, interagency bureaucracy. Maya shook her head. Steele has sources everywhere. The moment we start moving through official channels, he'll know. So what are you proposing? Small team, unofficial insertion. We secure the compound and the evidence before anyone knows we're there. Patterson's expression darkened. That's not how we operate. We build cases. We follow procedures. We don't wait for predators to escape while we fill out paperwork. Maya's voice was harder than she intended. Robert, I know the rules. I helped write them. But Steele has been operating for 40 years because he understands how to use those rules against us. The only way to catch him is to move faster than his network can react. Patterson was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 50 years of difficult decisions. If this goes wrong, I can't protect you. The secretary will disavow the operation. You'll be hung out to dry. I know. And you're going anyway. I have to. Maya met his eyes. This is the mission, Robert. This is what you trained me for. Not the easy operations. Not the clean arrests. The ones that require someone to take risks that can't be officially authorized. Patterson nodded slowly. Who's on your team? Jessica Torres. She's ready. Anyone else? 2 operators from the Fort Sentinel mission, Marcus Webb and Sarah Park. They've proven themselves. 4 people against an unknown security force at a fortified compound. Patterson shook his head. You're insane. Probably. Maya allowed herself a small smile. But I'm also very good at what I do. The insertion happened 3 nights later. Maya led her team through the Montana wilderness on foot, approaching the compound from the north, where satellite imagery showed the weakest security coverage. They moved in darkness using night vision and decades of combined training to navigate terrain that would have stopped anyone less experienced. Jessica was on point, her movements precise and silent. She'd grown into the role faster than Maya had expected. Natural talent combined with the kind of motivation that only came from surviving what she'd survived. Spectre, this is Shadow 1. Jessica's voice came through the earpiece, barely a whisper. Visual on the compound, counting 8 hostiles on external patrol, armed, professional. Copy Shadow 1. Hold position. Maya studied the compound through her binoculars. Price had been accurate. The main building was a converted hunting lodge, but the security was military grade. Cameras, motion sensors, armed guards who moved with the discipline of trained soldiers. Steele wasn't just hiding here. He was prepared for exactly this kind of attack. Webb Park, you have the west approach. On my signal, create a distraction. Draw the patrol away from the main entrance. Copy, Spectre. Shadow 1, you're with me. We go through the service entrance. Find Steele. Secure the vault. Understood. Maya waited for the patrol pattern to cycle, counting seconds, measuring distances, calculating the narrow window they had to move. All teams, execute. Webb and Park's distraction was perfect. A controlled explosion at the tree line close enough to draw attention far enough to avoid casualties. The guards reacted exactly as expected, moving toward the threat, leaving the service entrance temporarily unguarded. Maya and Jessica covered the distance in seconds. The door lock was military grade, but Maya had cracked better in worse conditions. They were inside in under 30 seconds. The compound was quiet. Too quiet. Maya's instincts screamed warning, but they were committed now. Vault should be in the basement, Jessica whispered. Price's intel said below the main study. They moved through the building, systematically checking corners, clearing rooms. Still no contact. Still no resistance. Something was wrong. The study was on the 2nd floor. Maya found the hidden door behind the bookshelf, exactly where Price had described. The stairs led down into darkness. I'm on point, Maya said. Stay close. The basement was cold. Clinical. The walls were lined with filing cabinets, dozens of them stretching into the darkness. This was it. 40 years of documentation. Every officer Steele had trained. Every installation he'd corrupted. And sitting in a chair in the center of the room as if he'd been waiting for them was Victor Steele. He was 73 years old, but he didn't look it. Silver hair cropped short. Military bearing that time hadn't diminished. Eyes that held the cold calculation of someone who'd spent a lifetime manipulating others. Commander Chen, his voice was calm, almost welcoming. I wondered how long it would take you to find me. Maya's weapon was already trained on his chest. Victor Steele, you're under arrest. Am I? He smiled. On what authority? You're not law enforcement. You're not military police. You're a shadow operative conducting an illegal raid on private property. He spread his hands. Whatever evidence you find here is inadmissible. Whatever charges you file will be dismissed. You've accomplished nothing except exposing yourself. Get up, slowly. Steele didn't move. I've been watching you, Commander, since Fort Ironwood. You're good, better than Hartwell deserved. But you made a mistake coming here. The only mistake was yours. 40 years of documented crimes. 40 years of building a network that destroys soldiers. It ends tonight. It doesn't end. Steele's voice hardened. It never ends. Do you think I'm the only one? Do you think taking me down changes anything? There are 100 officers who trained under me, 1,000 who trained under them. The philosophy I created is embedded in the institution itself. You can't arrest an idea, Commander. Maybe not, but I can arrest you. Steele laughed. It was a cold sound, empty of humor. Price told you about the vault. She told you about the files. Did she tell you about the failsafe? Maya's blood ran cold. If I don't enter a code every 12 hours, everything in this room is destroyed. Fire suppression system, but in reverse. The files burn. The servers melt. 40 years of evidence gone in seconds. He checked his watch. The next code is due in 4 minutes. You're bluffing. Am I? Steele met her eyes. You're 52 years old, Commander. You've spent your entire career hunting predators. Ask yourself, would a man who built what I built be stupid enough to leave himself unprotected? Maya's mind raced. If he was telling the truth, they had minutes to secure the evidence before it was destroyed. If he was lying, it was a distraction, a way to create confusion and find an escape route. Jessica, secure the files. Start photographing everything. But if the failsafe is real, then we have 4 minutes to save what we can. Move. Jessica moved toward the filing cabinets while Maya kept her weapon trained on Steele. He watched the young woman work with something that might have been amusement. Private Torres, isn't it? The girl from Fort Ironwood. The one Hartwell tried to eliminate. Steele shook his head. She should have died in that evaluation. If Hartwell had been competent, she would have. Instead, she's here thinking she's making a difference. Don't talk to her, Maya said. Don't even look at her. Why not? She's part of this now. Part of your legacy. Steele's eyes never left Maya's face. You think you're building something, don't you? Training the next generation. Creating a system that will outlast you. But you're just doing what I did 40 years ago. Building an institution based on your own philosophy, your own beliefs about what soldiers should be. We're nothing alike. We're exactly alike. We both believe we know what's best. We both build networks to implement our vision. The only difference is that you think you're the hero. Steele smiled. History will decide which of us was right. Spectre, Jessica's voice was urgent. I'm photographing as fast as I can, but there's too much. We can't save everything in 4 minutes. 3 minutes, Steele corrected, and counting. Maya made her decision. Jessica, get out, take Webb and Park. Fall back to the extraction point. I'm not leaving you. That's an order, Shadow 1. If this place burns, someone needs to survive with whatever evidence we've gathered. Jessica hesitated for one agonizing second. Then she grabbed the memory cards from her camera and ran. Maya and Steele were alone. Noble, Steele said. Sacrificing yourself to save the mission. Patterson trained you well. This isn't a sacrifice. Maya's voice was steady. This is me calling your bluff. She lowered her weapon and walked toward the filing cabinets. Steele's eyes followed her confusion, breaking through his careful mask for the first time. What are you doing? You said the failsafe destroys everything if you don't enter the code. That means you need to be here to enter it. That means you never planned to let this evidence burn. Maya began pulling files from the cabinets, stacking them on the floor. You're too proud of what you built. You want history to remember you. You want these files to survive. Steele's expression flickered. Uncertainty. Calculation. You're gambling with 40 years of intelligence. I'm trusting my judgment. The same judgment that took down Hartwell. The same judgment that found this compound. Maya met his eyes. You're a narcissist, Colonel. You'd never destroy your own legacy. 30 seconds passed. 60. The failsafe didn't activate. Steele's mask crumbled completely. For the first time, Maya saw the man underneath. Old, tired, desperate. "You don't understand what you're destroying," he whispered. The military was dying. Weak leadership, political correctness, standards lowered to appease civilians who never served. I saved it. I created a system that built real warriors. You created a system that destroyed real warriors. Maya's voice was cold as stone. Every soldier you broke, every career you ended, every life you damaged. That's your legacy, Steele. Not strength, just wreckage. Federal agents breached the compound 18 minutes later. Patterson had authorized the backup team the moment Maya's team went dark, trusting that if something went wrong, she'd need extraction. He'd been right. They found Maya standing over Steele's restrained body, surrounded by 40 years of evidence that would fuel prosecutions for decades to come. "You took an insane risk," Patterson said when the debriefing was complete. "I took a calculated risk. There's a difference." The failsafe was real. Our techs confirmed it. He had the code ready. He was about to enter it when you called his bluff. Maya felt something cold slide down her spine. She'd been right about his narcissism, but she'd been wrong about how far he was willing to go. Then I got lucky. Lucky isn't a strategy, Maya. No, but understanding your enemy is. She met Patterson's eyes. Steele spent 40 years building his legacy. He couldn't destroy it, not even to save himself. Patterson was quiet for a long moment. "The files. Our analysts have started going through them. And 47 installations, not 37, 47. Officers at every level from lieutenant to general, a network spanning the entire military." Maya closed her eyes. The scope was even larger than she'd feared. "We have years of work ahead of us," Patterson continued. "Decades, maybe. But for the first time, we have a complete picture. We know who they are. We know where they are. We know how they operate. Then we start taking them down, one by one. That's exactly what I had in mind." Patterson smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. "Welcome to the rest of your career, Director Chen." Maya thought about the files in the vault. 47 installations. Hundreds of officers. Thousands of potential victims. The war was bigger than she'd imagined, but so was the army she was building to fight it. The trial of Victor Steele lasted 47 days. Every major network covered it. Every military affairs correspondent analyzed it. Every politician with an opinion on military reform used it to advance their agenda. But for Maya, sitting in the gallery day after day, the trial was something more personal than headlines. It was the end of a war that had consumed her entire adult life. Steele fought harder than Hartwell had. His lawyers were better. His connections were deeper. 3 times the prosecution nearly collapsed under procedural challenges. 3 times Maya watched from the shadows as Catherine Reeves found a way to keep the case alive. On day 44, they played the recordings from Steele's vault. His own voice, calm and professorial, explaining to a room of young officers how to identify and neutralize soldiers who showed excessive independence. How to create paper trails that justified abuse. How to build networks of mutual protection that would shield them from accountability. "The military is not a democracy," Steele's recorded voice explained. "It's a hierarchy, and hierarchies require discipline. The soldiers who can't accept that discipline don't belong here. Our job is to remove them before they weaken the institution." The jury listened in absolute silence. When the recording ended, several of them looked at Steele with the same horror they'd shown Hartwell. The verdict came on day 46. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy, racketeering, civil rights violations, accessory to assault, accessory to murder. 47 years of building a machine designed to destroy soldiers, and the jury needed less than 4 hours to tear it all down. The sentencing came the next morning. Life imprisonment. No possibility of parole. Maya watched the marshals lead Steele away. Unlike Hartwell, he didn't scream or make threats. He walked in silence, spine straight, shoulders back, the bearing of a soldier maintained even in defeat. At the doorway he paused, turned, found Maya's face in the crowd. "It doesn't end with me," he said. His voice carried across the courtroom clear and cold. "The philosophy survives. The ideas persist. You can cage the architect, but the building keeps standing." Then we'll tear it down, Maya replied. Brick by brick, officer by officer, installation by installation. Steele smiled. It was the smile of a man who believed he'd already won. You'll spend the rest of your life fighting this war, Commander, and when you're gone, someone else will have to fight it after you. That's the point, Maya said. That's always been the point. They led him away. Maya watched him go, feeling not triumph, but resolution. Steele was right about one thing. The war wouldn't end with his imprisonment. The ideas he'd planted had taken root across the entire military. Pulling them out would take generations. But generations were exactly what Maya was building. The files from Steele's vault became the foundation of Operation Phoenix. 47 installations, 312 officers identified as members of his network, thousands of documents detailing methods, communications, and cover-ups spanning 4 decades. Maya built a task force to process it all. 20 analysts working around the clock, cross-referencing names, mapping connections, identifying priorities. The scope was overwhelming, but for the first time they had a complete picture. We can't take them all down at once, Patterson said during their strategy session. We don't have the resources. Then we prioritize. Start with the worst offenders, the ones with the highest victim counts, the ones still actively targeting soldiers. That's still dozens of operations, years of work. Then we'd better get started. The first coordinated strike launched 6 months after Steele's conviction. 8 installations, 8 teams, 8 networks dismantled in a single night. Jessica led the Fort Campbell operation. Maya watched the satellite feeds as her former protege executed a flawless insertion, secured the evidence, and brought down a colonel who'd been destroying careers for 15 years. Spectre, this is Shadow 1. Target secured. Evidence secured. 0 casualties. Copy Shadow 1. Excellent work. There was a pause on the line. When Jessica spoke again, her voice was different, softer, more personal. Ma'am, thank you. For everything. Thank me when we've finished. We'll never finish. You taught me that, but we can make a difference. Maya smiled. It was the first genuine smile she'd allowed herself in months. That's exactly right, Shadow 1. Now get your team home. We have 40 more targets to plan. The operations continued, week after week, month after month. Each strike took down another piece of Steele's network. Each conviction sent another predator to prison. Each career saved was another soldier who would go on to serve to lead to protect others. Patterson passed away 18 months after Steele's trial, quietly, in his sleep, the way he would have wanted. Maya stood at his grave on a cold November morning surrounded by the people he'd trained and the legacy he'd built. No public ceremony, no headlines, just a small gathering of operators who understood what he'd sacrificed. 52 years. She said softly, her breath visible in the cold air. 52 years of fighting a war no one knew existed, of protecting soldiers who never knew his name. Jessica stood beside her, silent, respectful. He never asked for recognition, never wanted glory. He just did the work day after day, year after year, until his body couldn't carry it anymore. Maya's voice caught slightly. That's what service looks like, not medals. Not promotions, just quiet, invisible dedication to something bigger than yourself. He'd be proud of you, Jessica said, of what you've built. He'd tell me to stop talking and get back to work. Maya allowed herself a small smile. He was never one for sentiment. She placed a hand on the simple headstone. No rank, no decorations, just a name and 2 dates. Rest now, Robert, I've got it from here. The war continued, but so did the victories. 3 years after Steele's conviction, Operation Phoenix had dismantled 39 of the 47 identified networks. 217 officers had been prosecuted. 11 generals had been forced into retirement. The entire culture of the military was shifting slowly but undeniably toward accountability. Maya's team had grown to 80 personnel. Analysts, operators, legal specialists, psychologists. A comprehensive system for identifying, documenting, and eliminating toxic leadership. The Phantom Division that Patterson had run alone for 50 years was now a coordinated network spanning multiple agencies. But the work wasn't done. 8 networks remained. 8 commanders who'd learned from the arrests of their predecessors, who'd gone deeper underground, who'd built stronger protections. And one of them had a connection Maya hadn't expected. Director Chen, the analyst's voice was hesitant. "We have a problem with the Fort Richardson file." Maya looked up from her desk. "What kind of problem?" "The commanding officer, General Catherine Hayes." The analyst slid a photograph across the desk. "Her mother's maiden name is Chen. She's your cousin." Maya felt the world tilt slightly. She stared at the photograph. Catherine Hayes, 54. The face was familiar. Family resemblance she'd never noticed because she'd never looked for it. "Are you sure her mother was your father's sister? She emigrated to the States in 1962. Lost contact with the family during the Cultural Revolution." The analyst paused. "General Hayes is your first cousin, ma'am, and she's one of the worst offenders on our list." Maya closed her eyes. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. "Does she know about the connection?" "Unknown. But ma'am, if this comes out during prosecution, it could compromise the entire case. Defense attorneys will argue bias, conflict of interest, personal vendetta. Then we need to be careful about how we proceed." Jessica appeared in the doorway. "I heard. What are we going to do?" Maya was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the faces in the files. The soldiers Catherine Hayes had broken. The careers she'd destroyed. The lives she'd damaged. Family didn't excuse that. Nothing excused that. "We proceed with the operation, but I won't lead it personally." Maya met Jessica's eyes. "You will." "Me, you've been ready for years. This is your chance to prove it." Maya stood moving toward the window. "Catherine Hayes is smart, connected, protected by layers of political influence. She's survived this long because she's learned from everyone we've taken down before her. And because she's your cousin. That's part of it. She probably thinks I'll hesitate, that family loyalty will give her protection." Maya's voice hardened. "She's wrong. The Fort Richardson operation took 6 months to plan. Maya stayed in Washington coordinating resources and intelligence while Jessica built the case from the ground up. They couldn't afford mistakes. Catherine Hayes was too smart, too connected, too aware of how previous commanders had been caught. Every surveillance device had to be placed perfectly. Every witness had to be protected. Every piece of evidence had to be unimpeachable. Jessica called in weekly. Progress reports, intelligence updates, the careful, patient work of dismantling a predator's network. "She's targeting a young lieutenant named Sarah Kim," Jessica reported during one call. 26 years old, top of her class at West Point. Everything Hayes hates. "What's the timeline?" 3 weeks before the targeting becomes critical, maybe less. "Can you accelerate?" "I can try, but if we move too fast, we risk blowing the case." Maya understood the calculation. Every operation required balancing individual victims against the broader mission. It never got easier. "Document everything. If Kim is in immediate danger, we extract her. Otherwise, we stay patient." "Understood." Jessica paused. "Ma'am Hayes knows someone is watching. She's become paranoid, checking her staff for infiltrators, limiting communications to in-person meetings." "Good. Paranoia creates mistakes. It also creates danger. If she figures out who I am, then you abort and extract. Your safety is more important than any single operation." "That's not what you taught me." Maya smiled despite herself. "I taught you to complete the mission. Part of completing the mission is staying alive to fight again." The breakthrough came in week 5. Hayes made a mistake. A single phone call to a subordinate discussing the handling of Lieutenant Kim. The call was recorded, transcribed, and added to a case file that was already devastating. "We have enough," Jessica reported. "Federal prosecutors are ready to move." Then, move. The arrest happened at 0600 on a Tuesday morning. Hayes was at her desk when federal agents entered her office. Maya watched the satellite feed from Washington. Her hands steady, her expression calm. Her cousin, her blood, and one of the worst predators they'd ever documented. Hayes didn't fight. She looked at the agents, looked at the warrants, and nodded slowly, as if she'd been expecting this moment. "Commander Chen sent you," she said. It wasn't a question. "Director Chen," one of the agents corrected. "And yes, family." Hayes laughed bitterly. "Tell her she's made a powerful enemy." "You're not powerful anymore, General. You're just another predator who got caught." They led her away. Maya watched until the feed went dark. The trial of General Catherine Hayes was shorter than Steele's, but just as devastating. The evidence was overwhelming. The witnesses were compelling. The recordings left no room for doubt. The defense tried to argue family bias. They claimed Maya had pursued her cousin out of personal vendetta. They painted the prosecution as a witch hunt driven by ancient family grievances. It didn't work. The jury saw the files. They heard the recordings. They looked at the faces of the soldiers Hayes had broken and made their decision. Guilty on all counts. 25 years. No parole. Maya didn't attend the sentencing. She'd stayed away from the entire trial knowing that her presence would only fuel the defense's narrative. But she watched the news coverage, saw her cousin led away in restraints, and felt something complicated settle in her chest. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Just the quiet resolution of knowing that the mission came before everything, even family. Jessica called that night. "It's done. Hayes is in custody. The network is dismantled." "How many victims?" 93 documented. Probably more we don't know about. Jessica paused. She was the last of the major targets. 47 networks, all dismantled. Maya closed her eyes. 5 years of work. Hundreds of prosecutions. Thousands of careers saved. "We're not finished," she said. "I know. New networks are always forming. But the old infrastructure is gone. Steele's machine is destroyed. Then we start building the system that prevents new machines from being created. Already working on it. Early warning protocols, training programs, cultural change initiatives." Jessica's voice carried a smile. "Patterson would be proud. Patterson would tell us to stop celebrating and get back to work." "That too." Maya laughed. It was the first real laugh she'd allowed herself in months. "Get some rest, Shadow One. Tomorrow we start the next phase." "Yes, ma'am." The line went dead. Maya sat in the darkness of her office, surrounded by the ghosts of 5 years of relentless work. 47 networks dismantled, 312 officers prosecuted, thousands of soldiers saved from predators who would have destroyed them, and one cousin she'd sent to prison because the mission came before blood. It had cost her everything. The marriage that had ended because she couldn't be present. The friendships that had withered because she couldn't explain her work. The normal life she'd sacrificed for a war that never ended. But looking at the files on her desk, seeing the faces of the soldiers who would go on to serve because someone had protected them, Maya knew the cost was worth it. The phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. "New intelligence, Fort Leonard Wood. Pattern recognition suggests early-stage network formation, requesting authorization to investigate." Maya typed back, "Authorized. Stay invisible. Document everything. I've got your 6. The war continued, but so did the warriors. 2 years later, Maya stood in the operations center of the newly expanded Phantom Division, watching her team coordinate simultaneous operations across 3 continents. The scope had grown beyond anything Patterson could have imagined. Not just military installations now, but defense contractors, training academies, allied forces. The cancer Steele had planted had spread further than anyone knew. But so had the network Maya had built to fight it. Jessica was in the field, leading the European division. Marcus Webb ran the Pacific operations. Sarah Park coordinated domestic intelligence. 3 former victims now leading the charge to protect others. That was legacy. Not the operations, not the prosecutions. The people who would carry the mission forward when Maya was gone. "Director Chen." An analyst approached with a tablet. "We have a situation at Fort Bragg. New commander is showing early warning signs." Maya studied the data. Pattern recognition, behavioral analysis, the same indicators they'd learned to identify over years of operations. Who do we have available? Lieutenant Colonel Torres just finished debriefing from the Berlin operation. She could be in position within 48 hours. Torres. Jessica Torres. The young private Maya had saved at Fort Ironwood, now a field commander in her own right. Send her. The analyst nodded and moved away. Maya watched the operations board tracking the dozens of simultaneous missions her network was managing. Soldiers being protected, predators being documented, a system that never slept. Her phone buzzed. A message from Jessica. Berlin operation complete. 14 arrests, 0 casualties. Ready for next assignment. Maya typed back. Fort Bragg, new target. Details en route. On it. Stay safe, ma'am. You too, Shadow One. Maya set down the phone and allowed herself a moment of reflection. She was 57 years old now. The physical demands of field operations had given way to the mental demands of directing a global network. Some days her body reminded her of every injury, every mission, every year of running on fumes. But looking at the operations board, seeing the scope of what she'd built, Maya knew she'd made the right choice. Patterson had fought alone for 50 years. He'd trained 12 operators in that time, each one carefully selected, each one carrying forward his mission. Maya had trained 80, and each of them was training more. The network was growing exponentially now. Not just operators, but analysts, legal specialists, psychologists, advocates. A comprehensive system for protecting soldiers from predators. The kind of system that couldn't be destroyed by taking down one person. That was the real victory, not the prosecutions, not the convictions, the creation of something that would outlast her own service. Her desk phone rang, the direct line that only 3 people had access to. Director Chen. Maya. A familiar voice, the Secretary of Defense herself. We need to talk. About what? Your retirement. Maya felt something cold settle in her stomach. I'm not ready to retire. I know, but the president is restructuring military oversight, creating a new division with permanent institutional authority. Not a shadow operation, something official, something that will continue regardless of who's in the White House. Maya was quiet for a long moment. You're talking about legitimizing everything we've been doing. I'm talking about making it permanent, building it into the system so it can never be dismantled. The secretary paused. But to do that, we need someone with credibility, someone who's been in the shadows but can step into the light, someone the military respects. You're asking me to come out of the dark. I'm asking you to lead the transformation, not as a shadow operator, as an official, a director with real authority and real protection. Maya thought about Patterson, about the 50 years he'd spent invisible, unknown, unrecognized, about the toll that secrecy had taken on his health and his relationships. What would this mean for my current operations? They continue, but with official backing, real resources, institutional support that doesn't depend on a single person's authorization. The secretary's voice softened. Maya, you've spent 30 years in the shadows. You've saved thousands of careers. You've dismantled networks that were destroying the military from within. Maybe it's time to let the world know what you've accomplished. Recognition was never the point. I know. That's why you deserve it. Maya closed her eyes. She thought about the faces in the files. The soldiers saved, the predators stopped, the legacy that would continue long after she was gone. Let me think about it. Take all the time you need. The offer isn't going anywhere. The line went dead. Maya sat in the darkness, weighing options she'd never expected to face. Come out of the shadows, accept recognition, build something official and permanent. Or stay hidden, stay invisible, keep fighting the way she'd always fought. She thought about Jessica, about Webb and Park and the 80 operators she'd trained, about the network that was already growing beyond her direct control. Maybe it was time. She picked up the phone and dialed Jessica's number. Shadow One, this is Spectre. Go ahead, ma'am. I need you back in Washington. We need to talk about the future. What kind of future? Maya looked out the window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, soldiers were being protected by people they'd never meet. Predators were being documented by operators they'd never see. A war was being fought in silence by warriors who asked for nothing but the chance to serve. The kind where the mission continues forever, Maya said, with or without us. 2 months later, Maya stood before a Senate confirmation hearing. Her face was on every news channel, her name was in every headline. The shadow operative who'd dismantled 47 criminal networks was finally stepping into the light. Director Chen, the chairman began, you've spent 30 years conducting operations that were never officially acknowledged. Some would say you operated outside the law. Some would say I operated where the law couldn't reach, Maya replied calmly. Every predator I helped convict received due process. Every case was built on evidence that held up in court. The methods were unconventional. The results were undeniable. And now you want official authority to continue this work. I want to make sure this work continues after I'm gone. Not as a shadow operation that depends on individual leaders, but as an institution that protects soldiers regardless of who's in power. The hearing lasted 3 days. Senators asked about methods. Generals defended her operations. Victims testified about how her network had saved their careers. In the end, the vote wasn't close. Director Maya Chen was confirmed as the first head of the Military Integrity Protection Division, a permanent institution with congressional oversight, independent funding, and authority that couldn't be revoked by political pressure. The shadow had become official. The war had become a permanent commitment. Jessica was the first to congratulate her after the vote. Director Chen, it has a nice ring to it. It always did, just different context now. What happens next? Maya looked at the young woman who'd grown from a targeted private into a field commander, from a victim into a warrior, from a student into a leader. Next, you take over field operations. I'll handle the politics and institutional building. We divide the work so neither of us burns out. And when you retire, then you take over everything. And you train someone to replace you, and they train someone to replace them. Maya put a hand on Jessica's shoulder. That's how this works. That's how it always works. The chain continues. The mission endures. The warriors keep fighting generation after generation. Patterson would be proud. Patterson would be annoyed that I'm talking instead of working. Maya smiled. But yes, I think he would be proud. They walked together through the halls of the Pentagon, 2 women who'd fought a war most people never knew existed. 2 warriors who'd sacrificed everything for soldiers who would never know their names. Behind them, the legacy continued. Operators in the field, analysts at their desks, a network spanning the globe protecting soldiers from predators who would destroy them. It had started with a single moment, a boot 3 inches from a young soldier's ribs, a 52-year-old woman who moved faster than anyone expected. You weak woman, the general had spat. 3 seconds later, his world had ended, and Maya Chen had begun building something that would outlast them all. The war wasn't over. It would never be over. New predators would always arise, new networks would always form, new soldiers would always need protection. But so would the warriors who fought them, generation after generation, legacy after legacy. An unbroken chain stretching forward into a future Maya might never see. That was enough. That was everything. The mission continued, and so did the warriors who carried it forward. Some women aged into invisibility. Maya Chen had aged into legend, and legends never died. They just passed the torch and watched the fire spread.